Welcome back, guys. This is part 2. Check out part 1 for more, where we had more nuggets and different things like that. This is mostly just going to be the reading. We're going to read Luke 23, Genesis 50, Matthew 27, and John 19. So here's Luke 23. Excuse me, guys. It says, "Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, 'We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ or Messiah, a king.' So Pilate asked Jesus, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' 'Yes, it is as you say,' Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, 'I find no basis for a charge against this man.' But they insisted, 'He stirs up the people all over Judea, over the land of the Jews,' in the footnotes, by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he heard that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." And then C says, some manuscripts say him. With one voice they cried out, "Away with us, release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." Now, all this is tying into what we were talking about in part 1 and what we're talking about this month. Our theme for November is forgiveness, right? "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time, he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He chose the people over, but all of this is God being glorified, and what the enemy wants to do for evil, God is working for good. Because Jesus had to fulfill God's plan, just like you have to fulfill God's plan, right? And their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. And I'm going to release this before I continue reading. In no way am I comparing the crucifixion of Christ to your situation, because it doesn't compare. But like Jesus said, a student is not greater than their master, and there may be some people that may have rejected you and chosen others over you when you've done them nothing wrong. But it's all for the glory of God, because God has a greater, bigger plan and scale in mind. There's some more notes that I could release for whoever that person is for, but I'm just going to continue reading. Okay, and surrendered Jesus to their will. So let's talk about the crucifixion. As they led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the barren women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.'" Hosea 10:8 in the footnotes. "For if men do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Like the skull, like Calvary, I believe, also Golgotha also. So it's one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them." Even though he's going through all this, guys, this is what he said: "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." They know not what they do. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And you ain't, doing the lots and dividing up the clothes and doing that for something that's not rich. So that goes to show you that his clothes were of value. Okay, the people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, he saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one. The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. That's why we're going to read, we read Luke 22, we're reading 23. We're also going to read Matthew 27 and John 19 for the crucifixion, because, like we know, with the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, a lot of them were talking to different audiences, like we were talking about in the first video to this morning, also in prior videos that we've been doing over the years with different videos. But they were talking to different different audiences, and some will give more details than others. Or you'll say, hey, this is the same story, but I didn't read this in that one. It's because it's given to you from a different context, right? So the soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. Although everything in the Bible is true, it's just some just give you different accounts because it's written from a different perspective and to a different audience. Okay. There was a written notice above him which read, this is the king of the Jews. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. And growing up, you watch the cartoons with the little, you got a little devil thing on one shoulder and the angel thing on the other shoulder. And, that's like he got this person that is influence of the enemy giving the insults, but then the other one stopped from the insults. It said, he was just doing the right thing. So it's like you have to remember, in the midst of you going through your trials and tribulations, it's always going to be the voice of the enemy trying to come against you and use who he can and what he can to work against you. But then you also going to have God's spirit and voice guiding you, and you got to continue forward because let God's voice prevail over you when you're going through, but the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence, you're doing the same judgment, right? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Oh, thank you, because I got something I got to share with y'all from a couple days ago that I forgot. The Lord just reminded me of it. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom, and when you come with your kingly power. Jesus answered him, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. But this is something that I saw a couple of days ago, and I'm going to release this. I meant to release this the other day, but I forgot because I didn't write it down, which is why I usually try to write everything down that he shows me that meant for me to write down and share with you guys. So, I meant to actually release this on Friday when we did our prayer, but I forgot. Like when you are before a natural judge, you have the defendant, you have the plaintiff, you have like the opposing side, and then you have different parties. You have a judge, everybody's in their respectful place. You have the guard, you have the person there taking the notes. It's different people in position, but the judge is the highest authority in the courtroom, right? Especially if that's their courtroom, and depending on like what floor you're going to the courthouse for, what you're going before the judge for, it depends. So many of you is like God is the ultimate judge, right? Greater than any earthly judge. And if a person is found guilty or not guilty, they're going to receive whatever it is for them. But if, let's say, a person has been bound, because this is what I saw. We're going to continue reading. Let's say a person has been bound and they served their time. They did their sentence, right? And they're released. Then they're before the judge now. And now the judge is granting them release. Like he or she is releasing them. If the judge say they release, they're released. And they can go. But if the judge say they're not released, they're not released. So it's like many of you have been like bound and in prison. and you probably sowed certain seeds in the past, and you reap your harvest of that, but you already did the time per se, not prison time or imprisonment time. You already did the time for that, and God has released you. He has freed you. As far as the east is from the west, He has released you. So it'll be silly to say to the judge, "Oh, judge, I gotta go back. I gotta go back." They taking it off of you. Even some people that's they do something, and then like the judge can release them on SOR. They release them OR. I haven't been in this for a while, guys, but on their own recognizance, they release them. You know, or they'll release them on bond, or they'll release them and say, "Okay, I'm gonna release you, but you come back," or "I'm gonna release you if you do such and such again because of your record, because of your history, and you come back, you know, pretty much throw the book at you." But when the judge say you free and you can go, you need to take them jail clothes off. You need to, when the guard unlock you, you free to go. You know, you can't just walk out like with the other people like regularly walking in the courthouse. It's the way you got to go in the back room. It's the way you got to do it. It's the way to do it. But you pretty much is free. So it doesn't make sense. The judge and the people in the courtroom going to be looking at you like, you know, the only people that's going to want you, especially if you really innocent or whatever, but the only people that's really going to want you to stay bound is the people that don't like you, that's on the opposing team. But if the judge say you free, you free. So it'd be silly to go back and want to go back into being in prison and bondage. It'd be silly to say, "Oh, I can't go back." The judge gonna be looking at you like, "I already done banged together, I already done gave the order. You can go back." And it's in 9 out of 10, it's gonna be paperwork for you to sign, either when you get back to the jail or the prison, or you're going to sign and say, you know, you can go. You gotta like check out, pretty much. You know, I'm just paraphrasing because, you know, whatever, but that's how God has been doing with many of you. You cannot say to God, you're not free. You cannot say to God, you want to be bound, when He has told you He forgive you and you are free. Why go back to that? You know, so I don't know who that was for, but I was supposed to release that on Friday, but let's keep reading. Jesus' death. It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, for the sun stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. God said you must free yourself. Galatians 5. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. You know, we're not to go back, just paraphrasing, to a yoke of bondage or slavery. You know, but that's Galatians 5:1, clause 8. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Okay, let me finish reading because we have a lot more to cover. It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, for the sun stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, "Surely this was a righteous man." When all the people who had gathered to witness this sight saw what took place, they beat their breasts and went away. But all those who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. And guys, sometimes you just got to go through and do what God called you to do. People will get it afterwards. But sometimes you really just got to continue forward. You can't allow, if they get it or not, to stop what God has given you. Now, that's a word for somebody. Jesus' burial. Now, there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good and upright man who had not consented to their decision and action. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea, and he was waiting for the kingdom of God. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb cut in the rock, one in which no one had yet been laid. It was preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The woman who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment. And then there's the resurrection in 24, as we've talked about Jesus, the apostles, the disciples, and lots of other videos on this channel. It's a lot of uploads on this with that, but we're going to continue on with the other scriptures. We're going to go to Matthew 27 now. All of 27, because see, Judas hangs himself, but in the other ones he didn't do it. He did it in the other ones, but it's different accounts, because this is Judas hangs himself, Jesus before Pilate, the soldiers marked Jesus, the crucifixion, the death of Jesus, the burial of Jesus, the guard at the tomb. Okay, and whatever I don't get a chance to finish reading, I'm just going to leave below. But hopefully I'm able to read John 19 and Genesis 50. Or I'm just going to leave the link for where you can read, where we read those videos, where I've read them, not read those videos, read those. I read them to you guys on the videos and where we did our series with it. Okay, so Judas hangs himself. Early in the morning, all the chief priests, and you can go back in 26 to see what happened. The light is doing it. Okay. The chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate and the governor. I'm trying to fix the light, y'all, but just gonna read. Okay. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. Even Joseph was, he was sold. He was betrayed for the silver, right? I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They like, what they have to do with us? That's on you. What is that to us? They replied, that's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. And we see two different parallels. Peter disowned and denied Jesus, but he didn't kill himself. He went through, but, Jesus had already told him, like we talked about already. He had already told him, and when you are restored, he says, Simon, I prayed for you. Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, but I prayed for you. When you are restored, go back and strengthen your brothers, So it's like, this is another thing. You got to hold fast to the promise that God has for you. Jesus already knew that Judas was going to do this before Judas even knew he was going to do it. So we see one hung himself and one was restored and, moved powerfully. Even, Peter, when he died, he died on the cross, and it said that he died upside down because he did not think himself worthy to die like upwardly like his Lord did. Although dying on the cross is a painful process because you're going through, you're being crucified. Most likely you're being flogged and beaten before you ever go on there, so you're using a lot of blood. You're dealing with asphyxiation. Your breathing is different. Everything is different as far as you're dealing with a lot of torture and torment physically and mentally. And then people are watching you, and a lot of times you not going there with no clothes on like that, because Jesus, they try to put it, some people in the movies like he was dressed and all these things. It was much worse than that. He was like disfigured. People didn't even really recognize him, So that's what he did. Okay, so Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priest picked up the coins, and then the scripture curses anyone who hangs on the tree. We know what else it says with it, but and he committed suicide. So where he went. His spirit is not with the Lord. He's not with the Lord. He's not in eternal heaven. He went. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money, although they're the ones that had him with it. See the hypocrisy? So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day, because it was blood money, literal blood money. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. That's Jeremiah 19, 1 through 13, also Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9. And you can see Zechariah 11, 12 and verse 13 in the footnotes. But Jesus before Pilate. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Yes, it is as you say, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the feast to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked him, which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who was called Christ? For he knew it was out of envy that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message. You see how different parts of the Synoptic Gospels gives different things, guys. That's what I was saying. That's why we're reading all of them. Well, we've read it before in other videos, and done series on it, but I'm saying how it ties all together. His wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests And the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Christ? Pilate asked. They all answered, crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, crucify him. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. All the people answered, let his blood be on us and on our children. What a dangerous thing to say. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers mocked Jesus. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium, and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. Hail, King of the Jews, they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. Now we're into the crucifixion. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, you are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Save yourself. He wasn't saying that literally with the temple, because it took years and years and years to build that physical temple. But he was speaking metaphorically, like more so of his body. Right? Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. These are all church people, supposedly, quote unquote. The priests, the teachers of the law, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders are supposed to be people of God, but they were more into religion than relationship. And it goes to show you what spirit was inside of most of these people that mocked him. Okay, he saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross and we will believe in him. And this is a word for somebody. You got people, or you had people that mock you when you was going through carrying your cross and going through your trials and tribulations. But you don't answer to them, you answer to God. You go through what you got to go through, but when God raise and rise you up, they will know. You don't got to prove it to them. You already proven in Christ. I've been telling y'all this for years. You don't got to prove nothing to them. Glory to God. You are proven in Christ. Your faith gonna speak for you. God gonna back you. Okay. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the robbers who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. The death of Jesus. From the 6th hour, but we know that one of them, what one of them said when we just read it, right, about coming into paradise. The death of Jesus. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came all over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice. I'm not even going to pronounce that, because every time I always have a hard time pronouncing it. But basically what it means is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Psalms 22 verse 1. Then when some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar. And that's disrespectful, because somebody's thirsty. Yeah, it's like you thirsty and somebody give you wine vinegar. Right? Put it on the stick and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. Glory be to God. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Now we're going to talk about the burial of Jesus in the garden at the tomb. If I have time, I'll read a little bit of Genesis 50. I may have to leave John 19 below. Okay, so excuse me, the burial of Jesus. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, the guard at the tomb, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. Sir, they said, we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So get an order for the tomb to be made secure until the third day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first. Take a guard, Pilate answered. Go make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. But even when he raised, the angels were there, and they said, who are you looking for? This Jesus that you are looking for has risen, just as he said. And we know that Jesus appeared to people and to his disciples and things. But we have about 5 more minutes or less before this thing cuts off. We're going to read a little bit of Genesis 50, and I'll put the camera on John 19. It's the same as the crucifixion, just in that different context. So we were talking about Joseph. I'm going to leave our Joseph series below as well. And I really want to read Genesis 50 verse 20. I'm going to read verses 1 through 21 for this though. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. This is Joseph, because I'm just going to leave the series below, but we know the story of Joseph. His brothers betrayed him. They sold him. They pretty much left him for dead. And he went through the pit. He went through Potiphar's house. He went through the prison, and he was elevated to the palace. God was with him. God favored him in all things. God blessed him. God was with him through so many trials and tribulations. And now the visions and dreams, because he was favored, one of his father's favorites, and his brothers were jealous of that when he was younger, like a teenager. Now this is many years later, and he like 30, or between 30 and 33 or so, some time then passed. And his, God has built him up, his character, and the visions and dreams that he saw came to pass. Now it's a famine in the land. It's a famine all over the world pretty much during this time. And Egypt is the location where people are coming for food. Like I said, we've done a lot of teachings on Joseph and things, but we're going to read the verse 1 through 21 because we're talking about forgiveness, right? Joseph threw himself upon his father and wept over him and kissed him. You can go back and read, or just listen to the videos we did. So I'm just going to read. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking the full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, if I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return. Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him. It was a very large company. When they reached the threshing floor of Atad, near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly, and there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, the Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning. That is why that place near the Jordan is called Abel Mizraim, which means mourning of the Egyptians. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abraham had bought as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite along with the field. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt together with his brothers, the same ones that betrayed him, right? But not Benjamin, but the other ones, and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. Joseph reassures his brothers. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left of course, right? Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers, the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father. When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came. This is one of my favorite characters in the Bible because I can relate to him so much. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves, they said. Listen to this, guys. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And this goes to show he really did forgive them. Because see, daddy ain't here no more. Daddy can't protect y'all no more. So this goes to show that he really did forgive them. Forgiveness is so important. Right? So then don't be afraid. I'll provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Right? And I'll just put the because it's about to cut off. I'm going to just put it on John 19. As soon as I can find it, y'all. John 19 is the same. It's Jesus sentenced to be crucified. As far as the crucifixion, I'm just going to put it so you guys can see. But I'm going to leave when we actually read all of it below. It's the crucifixion, the death of Jesus, the burial of Jesus. Okay, so I pray that you guys were blessed with our video, you know, and you got a nugget out of it or some encouragement. God bless you.